Yeah.
Hey, it's Danny Woodburn.
Come on up.
I'm Mickey Abbott. I stood in for Punky Brewster when all of you was nothing. Santa is not a commie. It's little people. You got that?
Danny, thank you so much for joining us on Seincast. Welcome.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Yes. Wanted to start at the beginning. When were you bit by the acting bug?
Funny. I think I've always had it, but it was, as they say, dormant. I had that dormant bug in me for a while. I spent most of my teen years focused on the sciences. I was going to get into medicine. I was going to be a veterinarian. I was actually accepted to pre-med at Penn State before I made a decision to shift gears completely. Mm-hmm. And I had spent actually some time in the hospital right after high school, and that gave me sort of time to really reflect on my life choice. And I knew I had it in me. I had always listened to comedians growing up. I was very into movies, and the television was a big babysitter at my house, and I was largely raised by a single mom who had a job and had to raise 3 boys. So yeah, I think I always had it in me that this is what I wanted to do, but I never sort of thought realistically about it until that time of reflection happened after high school. Mm-hmm. I never did a play in high school. I think I had one acting class in high school.
Wow. So you started acting in college then, right? You're from Philly.
Yeah, I went to Temple University, their School of Communications and Theater, and I majored in theater for half the time I was there, and then I majored in radio, television, and film for the other half, as they called it back then, RTF. Mm-hmm. Now it's media arts, they call it, because there's so many different media.
So did you book it to LA as soon as you graduated, or did you, hang out in Philly or New York for a while?
Right after college, I did a play in New York, a small show called The Soda Jerk in Lower Manhattan at a theater, and we were like an 11 o'clock show. So we were just sort of weird, funky, artsy kind of theater piece, and I did that before I left. But that was, I think I graduated sort of off year because I had to leave college again to go back to the hospital, and then I came back to college. So I had like the 4.5-year plan or whatever it was. I graduated in January, and I did the play, and then that summer I worked for Freedom Theater as a teacher, where I had all these like sort of inner city school kids coming to Temple, actually, and I taught classes from 9 to 5 to kids. And then with that money, I picked up and left for LA.
So we're thinking like what, 1990 or so? You're in your mid-20s.
Yeah, I landed in LA December 1st, 1989, and I was 25.
Did you head out to California thinking that, all right, this is where I've got to put in the next 5, 10, 15 years, or were you just going to try it out for a while?
I think a lot of people put a time frame on it, and I just never thought that way. I just thought, this is my process now, and my first thing to do was I got into a stand-up comedy class, and I'd always wanted to pursue comedy, and I thought it'd be a good thing to do in terms of being on stage and keeping active as a performer. So I started comedy in 1990, pretty much 3 months after I got to LA. And I think my day job at the time was, I had 2 day jobs in the early 90s. One was doing like phone solicitation, and another one was selling cowboy boots. In the early 90s, like every schmuck wanted a pair of cowboy boots. I don't know why, but it was like, it had nothing to do with being a cowboy or riding horses, just it was the trend. So there were boot stores all over LA, and I was a cowboy boot salesman.
I'm trying to think of like what came out at that time, like Young Guns, like what's the cultural reference?
I don't even think it was not even remotely cowboy related. It was just this trend blue jeans and cowboy boots, and I don't know. I have no clue. It was never my thing. In fact, it injured me selling those cowboy boots because I had to wear the damn things.
Oh my God.
I remember I had to buy them too. For some reason, they figured it was legal that they had to charge you to buy your first pair of shoes, that you had to sell in those shoes. And I'm like, I don't wear cowboy boots. I don't have any. It was like, well, we'll sell them to you at 50% off, blah, blah, blah.
Oh, you're doing me a favor.
And,
thanks.
Exactly. So I pretty much spent my first paycheck, with cowboy boots. So.
Well, you didn't have to wear like a hat or like
no,
chaps
thank
or anything.
God
right?
I didn't have to wear a hat. I mean, that would just be the most. I would have to quit right away.
Yeah. So you're selling cowboy boots. You're in the comedy scene. When did you first hear about the Seinfeld audition? That would have been, I'm guessing, like late '93, early '94.
Yeah, it was. I had an agent for a while. I had done a couple of small roles. My biggest role was my first one, which was an episode of Hunter. I was a guest star. I played a thief, and then I did like a small role on what they called it, day playing. So I did a day player role on a show called Pros and Cons, and I did a couple more day players on Murder, She Wrote. And I worked on this super low-budget kids movie with Cheech Marin and Mr. T about a bear. And then that's while I was selling cowboy boots, actually. And then I got the call late '93 to audition. I think I was on probably my third agent by that time.
Oh, my God.
And so the way auditions work is you go in usually for a preliminary meeting with the casting director or casting assistant. In this case, it was a casting assistant. Then I met with the casting director. And then you go in and meet producers. And for me, the producers were Jerry and Larry. So it was the casting director and Jerry and Larry on my third callback.
Wow. Okay. So it's not like everyone stands up. Brilliant. You got the role. Congratulations.
No. Yeah. You got to jump through hoops. They get, and at the time they were already getting numbers like, that you can't get today. A 22 share,
Mm-hmm.
the highest. So it was the highest rated show of the time, like high as, higher than American Idol, essentially, because there's so few choices back then compared to today. I mean, there was cable, but not to the saturation that exists now.
So you're probably, I'm throwing a lot of numbers out there for some reason, but you're probably like 30 years old or so when you're auditioning for the show. Seinfeld is this
29.
Oh, 29.
29. Yeah.
Seinfeld is this, huge show. You of course knew about it. Is it nerve-wracking? Are you excited? Is there a lot
funny thing is, I was not an avid watcher of the show. I liked Jerry's comedy, but I was never really introduced to it. And so I think, even though I knew it was like the number one show, I didn't allow the pressure of it to hit me that much because I wasn't really watching it at the time. Mm-hmm. But rest assured, I watched it a lot after that.
Sure.
And I was like, oh, damn, this is a really good thing to be on. So, but that first episode, that was the stand-in episode. Mm-hmm. And there were two roles to get. And I really wanted, of course, the Mickey role. I didn't want the Johnny Vigiani role because that was a smaller part and,
mm-hmm.
Not as meaty and fun. So I knew in going back, we were reading both parts, but they kept sort of steering me toward the Mickey role, which of course I was excited about. So on the day, that fateful day that I actually got the job, I auditioned for Jerry and Larry and Mark Hirschfeld, who was the casting director at the time and was for the run of the show. We did the scene, and they told me to wait in the inner office. So there's an inner and outer office. So I thought, this is good. I'm waiting in the inner office. Everybody else is still in the outer office. They still had a few more people to see. They auditioned them, and they would each go past me into the outer office as they left. So I thought, this is a really good sign. So they came out. They offered me, Larry offered me the role of Mickey, and he said, can you start today? And I was like, absolutely. So I said, can I just call my girlfriend at the time, who I'm married to now, just to let her know that I'm not coming home today. So I called her. We screamed on the phone with each other, and then I quickly called my agent from a payphone, by the way, at the time, that was on the lot. I called from a payphone.
They couldn't even let you use the office phone.
No, I didn't use the office phone. I just went out and thought, I got to find a phone.
It's fantastic. And on top of getting this great news, do they do a run through, like a table read immediately?
Yeah, so the very first thing is I make the call, and then I walk down to the sound stage, stage 9, which is the first stage you bump into coming into the CBS lot in the Valley. It's called CBS Radford, and in Studio City. So I walk down to I guess it's like a block away from where I auditioned. I walk down to the other end of the lot and go into the sound stage, and everybody's already at the table read. Now, mind you, I hadn't done a sitcom yet. I hadn't done a role of this substantial size. I had not been, filming anything in front of a live audience. But I knew the process because in 1991 I had been a stand-in on the show Step by Step. So I did that whole first season of Step by Step, and I really got an idea of how they run what they call a 4-camera sitcom. Mm-hmm. And so, which is the traditional sitcom model that sort of sprung up in the 70s as the more popular model. Mm-hmm. Like if you go back to first season of Happy Days, that was a single camera show. And then the second season, after they got rid of his older brother, they moved to 4-camera. So that's, essentially preset sets, the house, Arnold's drive-in, all the little preset sets. So this was my knowledge of this was, fair at the time, mm-hmm. Just because I had that experience of being a stand-in. And so I knew the table read was the first procedure. I sat down at the table across from Michael, and we read the scene. And when our scene to fight came up, we essentially went at each other across the top of the table, which I think cinched it for me because that showed how well we actually worked together as a team. And I think it also helped. I think there was key moments that I think helped to make Mickey a recurring character instead of a one-time spot. And I think that, for me, was one moment. And then the other moment, I think, was Michael's improvised line, "Easy, Mickey, easy." Mm. So, as people may know, the term midget is a derogatory term, and I had a lot of trouble with it being in the script and not addressing it. And Larry and Jerry both understood that, and they didn't want me to make any speeches, but I said I wanted to react to George saying this line so cavalier. And so Larry gave me the direction of do like a slow burn, like a fast reaction with a slow burn. So that's that moment of me grabbing the kitchen counter and then doing a slow burn, look back to George, and then Michael just sort of threw out that line, "Easy, Mickey, easy." So I thought that line right there set the tone for who Mickey was going to be from here on out. This guy that's quick to anger and will beat the living crap out of you if necessary.
It's just brilliant. You're such a nice, friendly guy during your first scene, but there's just that little hint that this guy might be a little off. He's a little volatile.
And that thing about all the characters, they're all a little off in some way. Mm-hmm. All those people, Vanya, Uncle Leo, all these different characters that have popped up over the course of the show, they all have some twitchy thing wrong with them. Mm. And, the quick to violent anger was my twitchy thing.
Right. Now, you said that the table read sort of cinched the role for you, or at least...
Well, it certainly gave me a lot of confidence that we could break up the room just with this physical moment between us. Mm-hmm. And the fact that we were able to sort of capitalize on our differences without pointing a finger at it. Because in the script, it was written that Mickey jumps on his back and they spin around. And it was just very sort of, it seemed like Mickey was more like an animal than a person. Mm-hmm. And so I had the thought that, can't we just sort of face off mano a mano, like we're equal combatants, not like I have to do something special to get the upper hand, but that I can get the upper hand no matter what. And so that bore this image of Michael and I grabbing each other face to face and him bending down to grab me and me holding on. And it looks like I'm flinging him back and forth in that first little skirmish. But the reality is Michael's throwing his body left and right, and I'm just holding on to him for dear life.
How much of that had to be rehearsed beforehand? Because we've kind of heard that, Michael, well, personally, I think he's the most fascinating actor out of the main four, just because of all the work he puts into the character and the performance. Did you guys really have to iron things out before filming, or did he like to surprise you from either in the stand-in or any of your future episodes?
I think we developed a rapport because he wanted to rehearse. Like the way it works, Seinfeld has so many scenes. Like a typical sitcom might have 12, maybe 14 scenes, but Seinfeld would have you wouldn't know it unless you hit a little counter, but it would have 30, 35 scenes sometimes. Mm-hmm. And so they would zip by so quick. And so each of those scenes takes rehearsal. So while you're waiting for your scene to come up, you're sort of hanging out. Mm-hmm. But Michael would always say, hey, Danny, let's go over here and work this out. So we would get together and sort of choreograph some beats and choreograph some of the physical stuff, and he was very sort of devoted to each nuance of the physicality. And you could sort of see that, of course, in his performances. But I was, more than willing to not go sit, in my trailer or whatever, my dressing room and wait for the next scene. I was always a guy that hung out on set and watched and learned. And so when Michael saw me sitting around, he said, let's get together and work on this. And I think it just made for our relationship to be much more strong.
Well, you're such a natural. I don't know if Jerry and Larry and Mark Hirschfeld, if they just got lucky with the actors they saw, but you're just a prime example of one of those people that is just a perfect fit for the show. Again, it just blows my mind that, you only, and I say only, did 6 or 7 episodes. Just because it seems like you're always
It's a weird count because there's 5 and then the finale, but the finale is a 2-parter.
Yeah.
So it's, you know what I mean? So it's a weird count. And then there's also 2 clip shows that I'm in too. So that sort of throws it off. Mm-hmm. So you could say somewhere between 5 and 9. But the thing about Michael, too, is we would do these rehearsals, and I think the only time he would surprise me, he surprised me shoot night, because I look over at him, and we're getting ready to do our scene, and he's there with the stunt coordinator, who is sort of semi-involved in our choreography, but it was mostly Michael working that out with me. So I look over, and I see him backstage. We're getting ready to go on, in front of the live audience, and he's putting on, knee pads and a back brace, and I'm like, did you work something out that I don't know about? Because I said, Michael, I don't have any pads. And I go, you're padding up. And he goes, well, you never know what's going to happen, Danny. And I'm like, oh, geez.
Did you ever get injured in your skirmishes with him? Did you ever, bump your head or get a cut?
I knew that when we rehearsed, there was a scene, when we first rehearsed the skirmish, and as it was written, I'm on his back, and, we're spinning around, or it was directed that way at first, and I didn't feel comfortable with it. But Michael also didn't feel comfortable because he could just see that I was going to smash into set pieces, or he was going to hurt his back, holding me on his back and spinning around. It was very possible to be injured doing it that way. Mm-hmm. And as luck would have it, it was so much smarter to have us face off, as equals.
Sure. Just so you know, on Seincast, we break down each episode of Seinfeld, and we just recently wrapped season 5, so we've only gotten to the stand-in. We haven't gotten to your future episodes, but something that I noticed on the stand-in, how Mickey and Kramer are treated like equals. And the character of Mickey from his first episode isn't there for the reason you think he is. Because when I think of a network sitcom and they hire a little person, I assume that they're going to exploit them somehow.
That's been a big part of my career where people wanted me to do this or wanted me to do that. And, always my goal was to present myself as a human being, mm-hmm. and never as a sight gag or just a prop in a scene. And I, think I'm blessed enough, at least in my mind, to have avoided that. But another thing that Jerry would always say too is you're never going to see a very special episode of Seinfeld. They always have that, you watch Full House and they'll say, oh, tonight on Full House, a very special episode. And so I've done my share of those very special episodes about the father who exploits himself and his son is embarrassed, that kind of a thing.
Mm-hmm.
But he's just a guy in the neighborhood, a friend of Kramer's. There's no blatant finger pointing,
Right.
in the way there is in so many other types of roles that I've done where they want to make it a learning moment,
Did you know much about the character of Mickey being a stand-in, a frustrated actor, or did they kind of write that into the role based on, like who you are, Danny Woodburn?
Well, it wasn't based on me in any way, but it is based on the idea that a lot of little people make a living between, as some will say, between, Christmas and St. Patrick's Day. They make their living as stand-ins. And there are people that solely make their living as stand-ins in this community. And it's a competitive, the little people acting world is competitive because there's so few roles and now even, of course, more actors than has ever been. And then there's the old guard, too. That's when they want to show you the ropes kind of thing. Mm. And so there was a lot of old guard there
Sure.
in that first episode, of course. But I would not say that it was written around my experiences, but my experiences as a stand-in are certainly reflected in the episode. There's a certain amount of embarrassment, certainly as an adult man, and you're doing a sitcom, and when you're rehearsing the sitcom, you're reading the lines of the 9-year-old kid or the 6-year-old kid, depending on how big you are.
Mm-hmm.
You're reading the lines to the mommy or the daddy, and it's seeing this bearded little person is a little strange for certain actresses or actors. I remember working on a film once as a stand-in for a boy who had to leave. They can only keep certain hours on a set before they have to go, and they have to have certain hours of schooling. And so when lights are being set and all that, they use the adult little people. And I remember a scene of being tucked into bed by this mom, and I'm there doing her off camera for her. And I could tell she's a little nervous about it. Like, this is a man that I'm sort of snuggling up with in the bed and not my son, I did my best to be professional.
Yes, of course. I would expect nothing less than being total professional. Well, I might be giving Seinfeld too much credit. I want to say, they're being so progressive because, they're including these little people. Did you feel that, when you were filming the stand-in, I'm so glad that I'm playing this type of character?
I've sort of always been outspoken about issues with little people, and there's an interview I did, which is not really an interview. It was more an email exchange I did with Roger Ebert, a few years before he passed away. Because, the word midget has been just sort of easily tossed about a lot, and I never let it go in a script without it being addressed. And for some shows, that's caused me not to get a job because I've said, you can't say that without me addressing it, or I've put it in contracts where they can't say it, or I put it in contracts where people can't pick me up, or have me stand on a table and, be exploited in this little person way that is so popular. So my advocacy on that is sort of inborn in me. It was always there, and it wasn't necessarily sparked by that. But I was certainly appreciative of the fact that it wasn't addressed. It wasn't singled out. It wasn't really outside of that first moment with George. It was never really pointed at again. It was sort of this sort of introductory way, but also in a funny way that allowed us to create an understanding of what the word meant. So as far as very special episode, that's about as special as it got. Mm-hmm. And I think they allowed it because two things. They knew the importance of it, and also they knew the importance of it to me, but also they saw it could be funny. And that's the most important part of what they're doing, and they want it to be funny.
Well,
so they're not going to let me have any sort of outspoken moment like that unless it lands comedically.
That's how I learned to say little people when I was younger.
Well, that's good.
And I'm not I know I'm just one person, but a lot of people watch Seinfeld, and there's a lot to take away from it. And that was a moment that actually has stuck with me to this day. So it wasn't in vain. You know what I mean? It wasn't just like this personal thing. I mean, it definitely, I think, helps educate people.
Born of that moment too is this sort of influx of angry little people roles. And I knew I was like the go-to guy for so many of those like volatile characters, but it helped me in a lot of ways too, because I got to play volatile characters that weren't also necessarily pointed at in the same way. Like I would get these roles where the character wasn't necessarily a little person, but just volatile.
Mm-hmm.
So they knew I was sort of that go-to guy for that volatility, and I was able to make a crossover as a performer. I didn't always just play little people roles. So, and another classic example is the character that I play on Bones, which is he's one of the heads of the State Department, and there's a good back and forth sort of animosity between my character and David Boreanaz's character, which I think is a more subtle version of Mickey, but without the like sitcom tone. But there is some funny.
Oh yeah, absolutely. No, you have a presence about you, Danny, on screen. I was just watching an interview, and I don't know if it's, I mean, you weren't acting, you were just being yourself, but it must be like the Philly side of you coming out, where I'm just like, I don't want to mess with this guy. I mean,
yeah, there is that. In Philly, you grow up with a lot of ball breakers, so you learn to break balls quite a bit, and that helps too. I think in having Philly guys and gals are able to do the dozens better than a lot of other cities, in my opinion. There's a saying based on an interview with, I think, Shane Victorino. So after the interview, somebody in the press goes, "Why is he so mad?" And they said, "He's not mad. He's from Philadelphia." So I think that really, I mean, if I could have a T-shirt, that would be it. I'm not mad. I'm just from Philadelphia.
Philadelphia. Well, Danny, before we go, I just wanted to bring up the Huffington Post article you did.
Yeah, I wanted to address the fact that, that 20% of the population lives with disability, visible disability in this country. And that's, we're talking about 56 million people, and we're talking about $200 billion in discretionary consumer funding, spending. And the fact that we have virtually no presence in film and television, I mean, comparatively to the ratio, we are talking about maybe 1% of performers that are on TV, or characters that are on TV have a disability. And of that 1%, an even smaller percentage are performers that actually have a disability that they're portraying. And so when the Oscars So White campaign came out, I thought, this is fine. I'm all for the idea of, addressing race. But if you're going to call it inclusion, and if you're going to call it diversity, you must not just limit it to the discussion it's been limited to. And the discussion has been limited to race, gender, ageism. The tenets of diversity discussion, those are the go-tos. Whereas disability has been systematically excluded from the conversation, even after I get in touch with the New York Times, even after I get in touch with the Hollywood Reporter, Variety, and say, hey, can't we have this discussion? Even after I reach out to local media, say, can we be part of this discussion? And the response is always, it's not no, but it's non-existent. Nothing changes. The discussion still goes on without people with disability. And so it prompted me. There was an article in the New York Times that came out about a very elite A-lister brunch discussing diversity, and not one leader of the disability community was invited to that brunch. That's why I wrote that article, and I'm happy to say it's gotten over 6,000 likes on the Huffington Post page alone. And I'm looking even at there was a recent study done by Annenberg Center for Media and Journalism. There's a study on diversity, and the diversity covered all aspects of race and LGBT, but it left out, without even a footnote or a mention that a future study will come out, it left out people with disabilities in this discussion in terms of film and television. So even though everybody knows it, people still don't talk about it.
Do you
try to reach out to Chris Rock to bring it up on the Oscar stage. And then I watched the entirety of the Oscars, and it was always about race and predominantly about black and white issues, and not so much the actual aspect of diversity and inclusion. So when you start throwing that word around, it can't just be about black and white. So people are starting to talk about it more, but not enough as far as I'm concerned.
Are you appearing at any upcoming like conferences or festivals? Where
I will be. There's a disability film festival called Real Abilities that's taking place March 10 through 16 in New York. So I will be in New York. I will probably hit a few comedy clubs while I'm there. I think I'm going one night to the Knitting Factory, and I think I'll be at UBC one night. But yeah, there is the Real Abilities Film Festival is March 10 through 16. I'll be there for that.
That's fantastic. You know, I'm right outside of New York, so I would love to either attend the festival or maybe I can catch you at one of your comedy clubs. March 10th to the 16th. That's good to know for our listeners that are on the East Coast. But in the meantime,
anybody in New York, you'll probably see an ad running in the cabs right now. I did a PSA a few mons back, and they're running them in the cabs right now.
Okay, great. And you know, if I can find links online,
I have made it to the very small screen.
But I'm sure the audience is huge, though, regardless.
Probably like the best rated show there is.
Yeah. If I can find links for all those, you know, maybe I can get some links from you. I'll throw that into our show notes so everyone can find them there. In the meantime, Danny, where can people find you online? You're on Twitter and Facebook, is that right?
Twitter, Facebook, by name. Most of my posts are public. I probably won't accept your friend request if you want to friend me, but anything that I think is important for everybody to see, anybody can sort of see and comment on. Twitter, I have an Instagram account, and DannyWoodburn.com is my website.
Danny, I know you're a busy man, so I'm going to let you go, but on behalf of Seincast and Seinfeld fans around the world who love you and your work, thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Hi, I'm Danny Woodburn from that show, Hey, Mickey! Yeah, that's the one. If you're like me, you love New York for its vitality, spirit, and most of all, its accessibility. That's why you should join me for the 8th Annual Real Abilities New York Disabilities Film Festival, presented by JCC Manhattan. It's the largest festival in the country, presenting the lives, perspectives, and expressions of people with different abilities, featuring award-winning films from around the globe, Q&As with filmmakers, actors, and more. Real Abilities New York, March 10 through 16. For info and tickets, newyork.realabilities.org.